Hey guys, how's it going? Today I want to talk about what I think is probably the most important factor in learning a language or any complex subject, and that is something that I like to call persistent consistency. What I've found is that with regards to learning a language, how it's not how much you're exposed to the language in total quantity, it's how often. And the reason for this has to do with why spaced repetition works. What happens is that when you first see something, it goes into your short to medium term memory. All right, so you see something like a vocabulary word or a phrase or something for the very first time, and then you can probably recall it for maybe anywhere from 30 seconds to a few minutes after you hear it just once and you learn what it means. And then you'll be able to recognize it and recall the meaning for probably a few days afterwards, and that's just one exposure. And then, all right, eventually, after a couple weeks to a month maybe, you'll forget it just about completely. Now, what happens is when you're learning a language and you see words and phrases that are used by native speakers who are speaking normally, as they typically do in like a movie or a TV show, and you will be exposed repeatedly to the most common language, to the most common words and phrases and syntax types, structures, grammatical structures, that sort of stuff, which you just you just sort of pick up. You don't need to have them explicitly explained to you to learn them such that you can use them. All right, you don't need to learn formal grammar in order to be able to use the language properly. You didn't learn formal grammar. Well, you might have, but for your native language, you probably don't remember any of it or very little, and you speak your native language at a native level. So you don't need that in order to be able to use the language correctly. But you will see something and you'll see it over and over and over again, and this will cause the most commonly used, which is what you want to learn first, right? It's the stuff that is used the most frequently in a language. You think, well, that's the stuff I got to learn first. All right, the most important things are the ones that are going to be used the most frequently. It's why so many people are interested in like frequency lists, frequency dictionaries. It's why one of the most popular articles on my website is one that's, I don't know how many years old it is now, 7 years or something like that, and it's talking essentially about word frequency, and it cites a study. I forget who the authors are, but it talks about how many words you need to know in order to learn a language. And it really gets into word frequency, and that's why so many people are interested in that. But what they don't understand is that you don't need a frequency dictionary, you don't need a frequency list. You need to expose yourself to the language a lot, consistently. That's the most important thing. All right, persistent consistency. What I mean by persistency is this is a language is a huge, all of it interconnected, complex corpus, all right, this is Latin for body, of stuff. All right, and what that means is that it's going to take you a long time to learn it. It gets worse. With a language, not only must you be able to recognize and recall all these little interconnected bits of information, but you have to be able to do so very, very, very quickly. Very quickly. Because, I mean, look at how quickly I'm speaking English right now, and how quickly the words and the syntax and the grammar is coming at you. You have to be able to understand this just immediately, quickly, automatically. And it's just a whole bunch of different stuff altogether. It's the grammar, it's the syntax, it's vocabulary, it's all of this. And it's mostly commonly used words with a few that are maybe used less commonly. Words that are more sparse. As an example, the word sparse is not a very common word in English, but it's one that almost all native speakers will know. And you recognize the word sparse, you recall the meaning of it immediately, and you do it within a fraction of a second of hearing it come out of my mouth. All right, so this is what you have to be able to do. Is you've got this huge, complex corpus of information, and all of it's interconnected. All right, all of these things are related to each other. And not only do you have to learn it, but you have to do something called overlearning. All right, overlearning is where you learn past simply your ability to recall, and you learn to the point that you can recall very, very quickly. You can recognize and recall the information in question very, very quickly. That's what has to happen with the language, which means that you need an enormous amount of exposure. Please don't let this discourage you. All right, because with a language, it's really easy to get an enormous amount of exposure to it in a reasonable-ish amount of time. All right, like 30 minutes a day, something like that. All right, it can be done, and you can reach a respectable level in that language inside of a reasonable amount of time. Maybe not 3 weeks, maybe not 6 months, but 30 minutes a day, a year and a half, 2 years maybe. You could be at a pretty decent level, maybe not quite fluent, but such that you can communicate and have conversations fairly well. But to do this, you have to be persistent, all right? Getting back to my first point, persistent consistency. You must be persistent. That is to say, don't give up. You're going to, for example, when you hear a movie, or you hear a native speaker say something, cuando sea que oigas que un tipo diga algo en español, entonces puede que sea muy difícil entenderles cuando hablan ellos muy rápidamente. All right, for example, in Spanish there, I just said when you hear a native speaker say something in Spanish, it can be very difficult to understand them when they say it very quickly, which they will tend to do. To your ears, it sounds quick. To a non-native English speaker, I sound like I'm talking really, really fast right now. And it just sounds like a blur, a mess of noise. You get used to this, and I've found that the key is repeatedly exposing yourself to those noises every single day. It doesn't have to be for 4 hours a day. It can be for 15 minutes a day. That counts. That makes a noticeable difference. Just over a period of a couple of weeks, 15 minutes a day will make a noticeable difference, at least in your listening comprehension. And if you will do this, if you will just be persistent in working towards your end goal, right? Be patient, then you will master this huge, complex, interconnected corpus called a language in a surprisingly short period of time, given how big it is. I want to say that there are well over 100,000 words in the English language, for example. You don't need to know all of them. I think the average native speaker knows around 20 or 30,000, something like that. And that's recognition, not recall. Recall is a lot lower. It's like 5,000 or something. So you have to be persistent. Don't give up. And when I say consistency, I mean every single day. You want to expose yourself just at least a little bit. 5 minutes. 5 minutes beats the hell out of 0 minutes. All right? So if you can only get 5 minutes, don't say, screw it, I can only do 5 minutes. This isn't worth bothering with. I'm not going to do it. Do it. It'll make a difference. It counts. All right? Not only does it actually count in the way I just explained, but also psychologically, it helps you. It makes you think, all right, well, at least I did something. I did something. I'm moving along. However slowly, I am moving along. It helps you there as well. All right. So, and when you consistently expose yourself, all right, to the language, you will be exposed most to the most used parts of the language, the most used words and phrases and syntax and grammar, etc., and you will pick those up first. And what happens is your mind can only focus on so many things at once. Usually, really, when you're doing something difficult like learning a new language, it's one thing. And so what happens is you learn the most common stuff first, which you should. That makes perfect sense. All right, this just happens on its own as you consistently expose yourself to the language. All right, and I would also recommend that you try to speak it as well. Repeat after the native speaker when practical. And as you're exposed to the language, you learn these things, and you learn them to the point that when you hear them, you don't worry about them at all. They get very little mind space. Your mind has to exert very, very little effort in recognizing them. Like if somebody's learning English, very quickly they'll get to this point with words like the, an, I, me, you. They very quickly learn what those words are, and when they hear them, they don't have to think about them. And what that allows them to do, pay attention here, what that allows them to do is to focus on the other words that they don't know or that they're not quite as familiar with yet. So you first learn the most common stuff, and then the next most common is what you'll focus on, because you can ignore the most common stuff. Now, you've got that down pat. All right, this happens if you're exposing yourself to 30, 45 minutes a day of the language. This will happen in a few weeks probably. All right, you'll learn the most common words because you'll hear them 20 times a day, and that just with 30, 45 minutes of listening to a movie, TV show, stuff like that. or even reading, you'll see the words over and over and over again, the most commonly used words in the language. You'll learn them very quickly. And then after that, you learn the next most common ones. And you're not exposed to them quite as often, but plenty often enough. And really, the only words that when you, on very rare occasion, because it will be rare, because they're very rarely used, when you hear them, will you need to actually, I need to stop and note that down, because I'm not going to hear it again for 6 months. And that's nowhere near frequent enough to actually learn this word, and I want to learn this word. The occasions where that will happen will be extremely rare because, one, those words are extremely rare, and two, it'll be a very rare situation for you where you're exposed to one of these really oddball, rarely used words, and it'll be important enough to you to remember it such that you're now going to take the effort to learn it. You're going to write it down, put it in Anki, whatever, and then learn it. So, although I like Anki, it has its uses, or whatever it is you want to use, any type of SRS, whether it's Memrise or Quizlet, or you do old-fashioned paper flashcards or whatever, those are great. By far the most important thing is volume, exposure. And you get, that is just being exposed to lots and lots and lots of the language. And you get that volume from exposing yourself to it consistently every single day. Right? And you need to be persistent in this consistency, and this consistently exposing yourself to the language. You're gonna have to put up with whatever it is in the language that you're learning every single day for a not insubstantial amount of time. So I suggest you pick something interesting and or entertaining. All right, pick a movie, a TV show, a book, magazine, newspaper, whatever it is that floats your boat that is interesting and or entertaining for you. All right, that is essentially my method. There are devils in the details. There's a lot of details there. I could talk for a couple hours about that, but that's essentially it. Is you want to expose yourself consistently every single day to the language. That is, or at least that's the most important thing. That's not the whole thing, but that's the most important thing. That's what I wanted to cover in this video. Thank you.